Spider-Man Homecoming has a bit of an interesting backstory. Back when The Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out, and didn't do so well, critically or financially, Sony was in a tough spot. They worked out a deal with Marvel. You know, Marvel could use Spider-Man for their MCU. You know, they used him in Captain America Civil War, and in turn, they would kind of help him out with rebooting a new Spider-Man series. So now we have Spider-Man Homecoming, which is part of the MCU. It's still a Sony movie though, but it's co-produced by Marvel. It works out for both parties as far as, you know, fans go, and as far as Sony's concerned, you know, I'm sure this movie will make a ton of money. With that said, I feel I also have to preface this by saying that I actually don't like most comic book movies. They're very formulaic in a way that is just not really that interesting to me. And they're just not really that compelling. I'm not familiar with director John Watts' previous work. He did Cop Car with Kevin Bacon. I haven't seen anything from him, but he, you know, definitely didn't bring anything new to the table here, as far as I'm concerned. And the big problem with Homecoming is that from top to bottom, everything just feels really forced. The characters, the relationships, and especially the humor. It was exhausting just having to sit through all these lines of dialogue that were supposed to be funny. You know, the audience ate up some of it. I ate up very little of it. But it was a chore, like getting through most of the film, unfortunately. Well, I mean, to the film's credit, there was one scene where Spider-Man is interrogating someone, and I actually laughed out loud at that. Parker has a best friend in high school who's named Ned, and he's like the prototypical nerd. You know, he wants Parker to help him build like a Lego Death Star set and stuff like that. And God, he was just like, he's one of the more annoying characters, like sidekicks, if you will, that I've seen in some time. Like he did not work on any level for me. There's Liz, who's, I guess, she's the love interest of the story. Her and Parker have zero chemistry whatsoever. There's Flash, who's the bully. Now, I'm not fluent with the comics. I'm just going back to the original Sam Raimi film, where Joe Manganiello played him. Granted, back then in that movie, he played the prototypical bully. But the bully here is no bully at all. He's in an academic club. Like he couldn't bully a fly. Like I don't know why Peter Parker is so, you know, worried about this guy. I don't even know why he's there, because it seems like it's these same group of people that hang out together, like these same kind of 6 or 7 people. So why they would let one guy just be a total dick to the other, I don't know. It's again just one of those things that didn't work. There are exceptions to the rule, and I'm sure you've heard by now, but Michael Keaton plays a really cool villain, actually. And that's been a problem with a lot of these comic book movies. They haven't been able to come up with a villain that is kind of cool and makes sense and feels menacing and threatening. And I think Keaton embodies all of that, and he really kind of dives into it. I don't think the story gives him too much to work with, so you don't see him like ham it up, you know, like he did in the Batman days or, you know, Beetlejuice, nothing like that. But his villain works on a small scale, and that works. It's not a taking over the world or destroying the world plot. You know, his character basically is just out of a job, and he's stealing weapons that's one of Tony Stark's companies is cleaning up. Basically, they're cleaning up that huge battle that happened at the end of Avengers, the first Avengers movie with all the aliens, the Chitauri. So basically, he's stealing that tech and kind of modifying it and selling it on the street, you know, to make a buck. And that's it. That's all he's really concerned about. And it works. Again, it's one of the like small scale things that works in this film's favor. Another thing that actually really worked, I remember Zendaya was kind of a bit of a controversy when she was cast in this film as this girl Michelle. And I don't know anything about the Zendaya except that she, you know, worked on a lot of Disney stuff growing up. But her character is smart and witty, and she was actually one of the few, you know, actors who could pull off the humor and the wit in the film. And I actually liked her character. She wasn't that prominent here, but I look forward to seeing more of her in the sequel. And then we come to Tom Holland as Peter Parker. a lot of people seem to dig him. I think he's okay. To be honest, he's my least favorite iteration of Peter Parker Spider-Man. I think in the Sam Raimi films, you know, Tobey Maguire, he was very good at being that dopey, you know, high school kid and stuff like that. And he pulled off the Spider-Man stuff just fine. And Andrew Garfield, you know, the emo Spider-Man, as some people call him, I thought he was okay, but I really enjoyed his chemistry with Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy. So it was like the relationship in those movies I really enjoyed. But Tom Holland here, he's just kind of there, to be honest. You know, it didn't go one way or the other for me. I don't think his quips, you know, were that great as Spider-Man. You know, he looks the part. He looks young. He looks like a Spider-Man. You know. So he's kind of like with the bulk of the cast, and he's just kind of there, and he gets the job done, and that's it. Unfortunately, the same goes for Marisa Tomei. All people could talk about when Marisa Tomei was cast in that role was like, wow, I mean, she's so hot. She's the hottest, you know, Aunt May ever. And that's basically all that's said about her in this film. Like, she's literally the butt of that joke for like the first half of the movie. And there's really not too many scenes with her and Parker, ironically enough. There's maybe 2, you know, scenes of substance between them. She's kind of like a background character, to be honest. She doesn't really play into the story at all, which I thought was a little weird, but whatever. That's, you know, that's the story they're trying to tell. I mean, to be honest, Robert Downey Jr. has more screen time than Aunt May. So that's about it for the characters. And as far as the story goes, if you've seen the trailer, you've seen the entire story. Like, you know, that's it. I mean, it's you know, Spider-Man is Peter Parker, I guess, is itching to do more. He did his little stint with the Avengers, and he wants to contribute more. And, you know, Stark is kind of keeping him at arm's length. He's like, listen, you're a kid, stay in school. And there's a lot of the movie that focuses on school stuff, which I thought was just really boring. And occasionally we go over to what Michael Keaton's Vulture is up to. Peter Parker stumbles upon, you know, these alien weapons and tracks it down to Vulture. So he's kind of taken it upon himself to stop the Vulture. And that's kind of it. That's the plot. The action scenes, honestly, felt really uninspired. There wasn't too much interesting going on there. I mean, the ferry scene was pretty cool, but, you know, you've already seen that in the trailer. You know the outcome. They do bring to light what Spider-Man would do if he has no buildings or any tall objects to kind of web himself across to, which is kind of cute. You know, but they also have Spider-Man doing some weird things in this movie. Very like non-Spider-Man-y. Like, there's a sequence where he's just kind of trapped in a building, and he really is just kind of sitting there and not doing anything to escape for a while. And there's like scenes with him driving in a car, which just feel weird. And one thing I really missed about the action sequences is, you know, there's not a single moment, like joyous moment, in the Spider-Man movie. The previous ones, you know, there were those moments where the audience could breathe, and kind of Peter Parker was, you know, enjoying himself and enjoying, you know, his powers, or, you know, swinging throughout the city. We don't even get any of those cool, like, swinging through the city scenes in this movie. It doesn't really happen. They kind of shied away from it for some reason. And speaking of that, like, another thing that didn't feel very Spider-Man-esque, at least to me, was his suit. One of the brilliant strokes that they did in the MCU is that Tony Stark designed his suit. I mean, I always wondered why a kid, you know, in high school would have a suit that looks kind of that cool, like the material and stuff like that. And it was kind of, again, a stroke of genius to have Tony Stark design it. So it's like, oh, okay, he gifted it to him. And what happens in the movie is that Peter Parker and his friend Ned kind of hack into the suit, I guess, and they unlock it's like all of its capabilities, and one of those capabilities is a voice, you know. So the suit's got a voice, just like Iron Man's suit, and you know, it's kind of cute at times. They poke fun at the situations, but it felt like a rehash of Iron Man. I mean, that's Iron Man's thing, to have the suit voice, and they already covered that territory in the first Iron Man movie. In regards to Iron Man, of course, in the trailer you see him help out in that ferry scene. But there was one shot I noted that's in the trailer. It was like at the end of every trailer where it's Iron Man, flying off with Spidey swinging by his side. Now, it's not uncommon for like scenes to be in trailers and not to be in the final film, cut or what have you. Like Rogue One was notorious for having a bunch of scenes that were not in the final film, but that was a case where they retooled the entire ending. But this is an interesting case because the director recently said that they put together that shot just for the trailer. They didn't want to use a shot of Spidey and Iron Man during the ferry sequence, so they put that together and put a city background because it looks better. I mean, he's right, but it's a weird form of like false advertising because you assume there's going to be some sequence in the city where they're at least together doing something, and that never happens. So Parker is trying to stop the Vulture and he fails, and Iron Man's like, well, you don't deserve the suit. And again, this is all stuff that's in the trailer, so I'm not spoiling anything. So he takes the suit away, and Parker is left to kind of basically the remainder of the film, which is like the third act basically, fight Vulture, without his super suit. He's just got like a regular crappy like hoodie and mask and stuff like that. And I thought it was an interesting concept to kind of deconstruct Spider-Man, and have him rely on like his wits and stuff like that. Except that Parker never really mastered the suit anyway. Web slinging, he can do that with or without the suit, with his web shooters. But he, most of the movie, he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing with that new suit. Like, he's trying out the new abilities and stuff like that. So when the suit's taken away, we don't really feel a loss of any kind. Like, it's like, okay, he's just doing what he's been doing the entire movie anyway. So it's really not a big deal. A friend of mine, Chris Bumbray, who also reviews films, made a good point, and he said that these Marvel movies kind of feel like TV episodes. They don't change too much. It's kind of the same thing over and over again. They definitely have their exceptions. You have the occasional Winter Soldier or Guardians of the Galaxy, stuff like that. But for the most part, they have a formula that works as far as box office success goes, and for the most part, critical praise too. And they're just gonna keep doing it because that's what works for them. Unfortunately for me, it's just like, it just feels like the same shit over and over, and I think that's what people are talking about when they already talk about comic book film fatigue, because we are essentially getting the same thing over and over, especially in terms of Spider-Man. This is like the 6th Spider-Man movie that we're on now, including the other flicks. I mean, within the confines of the movie you're trying to make, there are things you can do to make it compelling and different and unique. And that's the problem. We've seen this done, and we've seen it done better. In a recent interview, Edgar Wright was asked about AntMan, because he originally was working on AntMan. Him and Marvel couldn't work it out, so he left the project. Peyton Reed ended up finishing that one. But someone had asked him if he would ever, try to step back in and do another kind of like superhero, story. And he replied by saying that he felt Baby Driver was a superhero story of sorts. And looking back on it, I think that's a very apt comparison. And it probably didn't help that I watched Baby Driver for the second time a night before seeing Spider-Man. And that's, if we want to look at superhero stories, like, that's how you can take that formula and make it fresh, and unique and different and compelling and fun. And that's something that Spider-Man Homecoming is sorely lacking. It's just not very fun. Now, for those of you who really dig Spider-Man, I got a little collectible here. They gave this out to AMC Stubs members. It's a Spider-Man Homecoming desk buddy. So it's a little Spider-Man figure, I guess if you have a desk and it is lacking a Spider-Man, this is for you. And all you need to do for a chance to win this is just comment on the video. You can comment about what you thought of the movie. You can comment on the video itself. You can comment about anything. And I will just take everyone that commented and put their names in a hat and draw one for the Spider-Man desk buddy. And a little package. He's a little buddy. He's just a little guy. In any case, I'm sure Spider-Man Homecoming will make all the money at the box office. So I'm curious to see how his character will play out in the Infinity War films, and of course Homecoming 2 or whatever they call it. You know, I'm sure I'll hate that one too.